let's look at the Jamal that we're all talking about.
We're calling this segment Nuggets Rewind. What we think are their best or one of their best games from the regular season last year.
We're going to look at some of the Nuggets players, not all, throughout these upcoming episodes, since we started this show in the playoffs, so we didn't actually get to talk about any regular season games. And it might be fun to go back and just remind everyone that the Nuggets are still good.
You and I settled on the Boston Celtics game in Boston for Jamal. So the Nuggets won this 102-100. My first impression watching this game back yesterday was like, it was a cleansing experience, frankly, watching the Nuggets play winning basketball again.
I'm glad that it cheered you up a bit.
It did. It did. And like, I didn't even realize that I needed it because I've been like pretty upbeat.
Yeah, you seem fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Grace has been incredibly depressed. No, I've been fine, but I watched it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember when my team played good basketball and it made me happy. This game was a Jokic masterclass. We're going to talk about Jamal some in depth, but my gosh, like Jokic just had some like ridiculous, like he was in his bag in this game too. I remember the narrative coming out of this game where, the Nuggets took down the Celtics. They had been undefeated at home to that point. I think they were 20-0 going into that game. And the Nuggets were on a 5-game road trip. It was coming off of the loss at Philly that was kind of a really like left a bad taste in everyone's mouths because it was like they should have won that game. Like they were up late and like Jamal in particular like struggled at the end. Like Papev was like, I think they forced a turnover on him and like Batum was blocking him. It was like dumb shit at the end of the game basically that lost it. Again, part of a road trip. They go into Boston. I was like, this is an L. Like I thought this is going to be a scheduled L, like whatever. They'll go and maybe they'll beat the Knicks or maybe they'll be on a 3-game losing streak or something after this. And then they'll just have to win some more games at home. But they went into that building and they were determined to win that game. That was the narrative coming out of the game. But rewatching it, it did start off kind of like, okay, you guys were like being sloppy. Like this felt like a championship hangover game to start, especially on defense in the first half of the game. Second half of the game, both sides tightened up, but like the offense was pretty good most of the game.
I felt like the Celtics defense also was not as intense as they could be in the first like half and all that too, and tightened up like and got more intense later on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the Nuggets won that game and gave the Celtics their first home loss of the season. I don't know if it would be like up there for one of Jokic's best game of the season. Like I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh my God, he had so many great games.
But I don't know that will.
I don't even think it's top 5.
Okay.
To be honest, like especially because we played the Warriors like 4 times last year, so like all of those will be up there.
And the Lakers. We were looking at some other games. Jamal had 35 points against the Spurs back in the day. In April, he had a 37-point game versus Utah on March 9th. He had a 32-point game versus Sacramento, 37-point game versus Detroit. So as you can see with some of these teams I'm naming, they're not as formidable as someone like the Celtics, say, for example. I also think the Celtics game was more like of a playoff atmosphere than most regular season games.
Yeah, I think that especially officiating wise, I took issue with like some calls here or there, but not many calls were going to both teams. So that was a thing. I think even though the defense wasn't super tight in the first half, I think both teams were relatively disciplined, if that makes sense. So like it wasn't intense in the first half for either team, but everyone was pretty disciplined. I think on both sides of the ball, like there wasn't a lot of like, what the hell was that shot kind of things going on, or like how did you get lost off ball and like lose that shoot? Like that wasn't really happening. It was more just like positional things like that. So that was interesting, but these were also, I think, though, the 2 best teams in the league at this point. I don't remember if the Nuggets were the 1 seed going into this game. I think Minnesota was maybe leading in the Western standings at that point. But these were the 2 teams that everybody expected to make it to the finals. Let me see. I had a couple of other notes just for on like other nuggets in this game. I thought Peyton Watson, like defensively, clearly very impactful.
Hmm.
Offensively, looked like a baby giraffe.
He did hit 1 3 off of the Jamal assist. That was cool. But
Ye-
yeah,
That was
otherwise,
the like he blocks Jalen Brown. They go in down in transition, and ball ends up in Jamal's hands. He drives and then swing over to Peyton for the above the break three. It was kind of on like trailing. It was kind of a transition play. It was very nice. It was like, yes, basketball gods rewarding good defense kind of thing. But both teams, as I've pointed out, tightened their rotations in the second half of this game. I think AG played the entire second half. I think Christian didn't play in the second half. Peyton Pritchard didn't play in the second half. At one
yeah.
point, it was interesting. Boston was like trying to find like solutions because Missoula goes to a double big lineup of Kristaps and Luke Cornett front court with Tatum playing the three. It was interesting watching the Nuggets small lineup just kind of carve that up. They were even like rebounding pretty well, like defensively and that sort of thing. And we did see in the next meeting that the teams have that Missoula goes to a double big bench with, at that point, it was Xavier Tillman and Al Horford to try to counter the Nuggets bench. And they were just like grabbing offensive rebounds, just gobbling those things up, which was an interesting strategy that I haven't seen too many teams employ against the Nuggets bench. They were playing Cornette and Kristaps together, I think only in the second half is
Yeah.
when I noticed that. So that was just interesting. It was like clear like they were trying to find some answers, which was interesting because the game was close the entire time. It's not like the Nuggets or the Celtics were ever really running away with it at any point, except for one dumb run where the Nuggets just kept turning the ball over, I think in the second quarter before
Hmm.
I think the Celtics had a 12-point lead at one point, but the Nuggets were able to claw back, keep it close at half.
Some rebounding struggles for the Nuggets. They had
In
that
the first half in particular,
infamous
yeah.
like sequence. I think it was going around social media where the Nuggets just couldn't get a rebound on the same
Yeah.
possession. It was just one after the other after the
It
other.
was like 4 offensive rebounds on the same possession, and the Celtics didn't score on that possession, I'm pretty sure. It was really,
Yeah,
like
it's pretty funny. Thinking back to that game and thinking it was one of the Nuggets' better played games, which is obviously you can think that because it's the Celtics at home, which is very tough, and you won. So clearly you did something well as a team. But when I was watching it back, I was thinking, wow, so many of these players could have done much better. I mean, you have Jokic had 34 points, Jamal had 35 points, so huge production out of them. Mike had 13, which would kind of surprise me just watching
that
the
it
game
was
back.
low.
That it was low, but I thought maybe even was going to be lower than that
Yeah,
because,
watching I'm surprised at the number 13 too, because my main note on MPJ was how much he struggled with Derek White just separating from him off ball. And even once he would get the ball, like Derek White was always like poking the ball away. Like Mike needs to be stronger with the ball. One of the things I really want to see from him next year is getting ready to have more momentum so that he can drive off the catch. Like they can catch him. He tends to be really effective when like he's coming off of a pin down and they're usually trying to run him off the line, and he drives off the catch because he is so big. But when he kind of like stops and like takes his time, or when uh, there was like one possession where he tries to like seal for a post up, in kind of like a static position as opposed to on the move. A really good defender like Derek White, even though he's smaller, those smaller defenders can really be quite pesky for you if you're not like a power
yeah.
player. If you're bigger, if you're not able to weaponize that size and that strength advantage, then it can be a problem. There was like one bad play like that, and then on like the next possession, he drives in for a dunk. And it
Hmm.
was like, oh, yeah, exactly. It was like an and one dunk, too.
Jamal, I think, would have had 10 assists, or Mike had a really good like cut, or he was curling off a screen, or he was just like flashing to the ball. Like there was a couple set plays where it
Yeah.
was
He
set.
was moving off ball well, like, he would
Yeah.
get in position, but, like, losing the ball once he got it
Yeah. Or
was,
like
like
we would throw it entry to him and it would just like bounce off his hands or he'd get it and lose it. And like, so like a couple opportunities where he was just turning the ball over and losing it and could have been much easier for him. But yeah, he had the dunk. He had 1 3. He had a couple free throws. But Aaron Gordon was 0 for 6, 0 for 3 from 3. A lot of times left wide open in the corner, missed every single one. KCP, five
sure did.
points, not a ton of attempts. but just
Yeah, this was
not really in
also
it.
like KCP had the big stop on Tatum at the end, but I thought really on both ends of the floor it was not a good KCP
Yeah,
game
I
because
agree.
for the most part Tatum was like, "Oh, I'll just bully this guy."
And
Um, but then as soon as Tatum starts playing like a wing again, like KCP's got his number because the ball denial's really good and Tatum wants to like get into his dribble combinations and KCP's like, "No, you're not going to do that on me," and all that. But like he was mostly pretty effective in the post, even though on that game saving stop at the end. That's what Tatum, I guess, was trying to do. But even on that possession, like KCP forces him further out, and because of the aggressive ball denial, like makes the catch a little more uncomfortable, and then Tatum like freaks out and
yeah, that was the
all that
big
stuff.
play by KCP where he
Right,
made up
but
for the
for the
game.
most part in this game, I didn't really feel his impact. Like, there were a bunch of shots. There was, like, one big 3 that he does make, I think that gives the Nuggets the lead. They do give up the lead, later, but in the late 3rd quarter, 'cause it like I said, it was a back and forth game. But there were a lot of other shots where I'm like, "Oh, yeah, KCP is gonna make like that." Like, you just know it's going in, but then it didn't go in,
Hmm.
except for that shot. I actually don't remember others that I think he had the first bucket of the game for the Nuggets. That was for sure because the
Yeah,
Celtics were kind of
it
scoring,
was.
getting easy buckets, and then he had that mid-range. Yeah. I'm gonna miss that shot, as even inconsistent as it
I
was
know.
last season.
It's something that they always could go to. Yeah, the reason why I like that we're going through all these other players, even though this is a Jamal segment, is that I'm trying to show how not
Ugly.
effective some of the other players
Yeah.
were, and Jamal had to
Yeah.
really carry a lot. Jokic obviously kind of closed and sealed the deal, I think, on offense in this game. There was a lot of 1v1 post ups on Porzingis or times where they had a double and he found someone open for three, including
Horford.
Jamal. Lots of stuff like that. Jokic doing his thing. Obviously, Jokic is going to have his fingerprints all over any Nuggets game. This is just like a special Jamal game with this tough shot making.
This game was about the duo, right? But Jamal was even we're gonna talk about how Jamal was effective even with Jokic off the floor, but that was the other, bullet point, big thing, big takeaway about the narrative at the time, like, coming out of that game was, like, Jokic and Jamal just outplayed Tatum and Brown pretty decisively because they really
Mhm.
struggled in this game. Tatum was, like, 37% from the field or something on, like, 24 shot attempts. I'm like, "Wait, what?" It didn't even look that bad when I was watching the game. Like, it's funny, like, going back and looking at the
Mm.
stats after you rewatch the game because you're like, "Man, this was even worse than it looked," and it didn't look great.
I think Derek White could arguably was the best Celtic in that game. 24 points,
Yeah,
leading
you could say,
scorer.
like, first half, it was Kristaps, but he, like, completely disappeared in the second half of that game. It was crazy. Like, I think he had, like, 15 points in the first quarter, and then, like, I barely noticed him the entire rest of the game.
Yeah, and you'll see in we'll look at some clips for people watching right now. Like Jamal had a lot of a couple free drives because either Porzingis or Horford were in drop and were very worried about Jokic's role and just sticking to him, and Jamal just went right by them and got an easy layup that happened a couple times. So it
This is
worked.
the same coverage that the Wolves were employing, though,
Yeah,
and Jamal was not in a physical state, I
to
guess, if
punish.
I'm being generous, to punish that, but it was like, "This is exactly what we've been needing from you in that Wolves series." But let's jump over to the Jamal clips now that we've talked about everybody else in this game.
Right.
So 35 points, incredibly, incredibly efficient, game for Jamal, like you see here, 3 of 7 from 3. 8 rebounds, like, Celtics really need to be kicking themselves for that 'cause a couple of them were offensive rebounds too. 5
Hmm.
assists, he could have had even more, but like you said, like, the shooting from the role players in this game was really quite rough. The Celtics actually made 6 more threes, I believe, than the Nuggets in this game, but we were killing them in the paint, and from 2, and Jamal's mid-range shooting was a big part of that. If you go to he has this transition drive,
Yeah. So it's a
so they get the
transition.
rebound and he's just like, "Okay, we're pushing now." Like, he's like, "Oh, I'm faster than Derek White," and then, oh, look at that reverse layup. I think that should have a different name, but in the tracking data, it's like as it's just put in as a reverse layup. But this is one of those, like, you can hear the caller going like, "Jamal with the jelly."
Oh
Like, that
yeah.
was it kinda, like, echoing in my head. I was like, this was nasty." Like,
Yeah, that was a good
He
one.
he was really feeling himself in this game. Obviously making a couple of the catch and shoot threes that we've seen.
Right. Yeah, there were some times where I thought Jaylen Brown could have done better. Like he would just lose
There's that
him.
play you were talking about where Horford's in drop
Yeah, and he's
and
just like
they're like, "Oh no, I'm going to stick to Jokic
not
on this
stopping
roll," and
Jamal
then
at all. Just
yeah,
letting him in there. And that it kind of worked on a previous play where they were playing that drop and kind of Murray just didn't punish it enough and tried to get it back to Yoke, and Al Horford was right in position to just be right there. And I think Jamal after that was like, all right, I'm not going to do that anymore. And just trusted it, and it was open for him every time. He also had 2 early fouls in the game, came out early in the first quarter. So I think it's even more impressive that he kind of finished with this stat line after coming out early with 2 fouls. And he even fouled later in the game too, because he was playing pretty aggressive. Like he was trying to disrupt entry passes when the Celtics were trying to get mismatched post ups on him. He was successful some of the times, like he got a block on Drew. He was playing aggressive and physical in that game and was able to stay in it and close the game out. He had a huge second quarter, though. So he had a 7 point, like just straight 7 point run
on his own, yeah.
on his own in the second where, you know, they would go to this kind of mismatch. AG, like Pritchard, like we were
Right.
abusing Pritchard, whether it was Jamal or AG or anybody.
The
So,
Celtics looked so small in this game. It was really that was interesting. Like despite the, struggles by some of the other Nuggets, like and even the rebounding issues in the first half, there were just some plays where I'm like, why did they look so small? Like you're looking at this lineup here, and Cornette's on the floor. I don't even notice him because they've got him like off guarding somebody in the corner, or sometimes on offense they've got him standing in the corner as if that's going to be effective. And then they've basically got Tatum like doing all the screening and like doing five stuff, right?
yeah.
They've effectively got Tatum playing the five, even with Cornette on the floor, which I find interesting. Obviously, you want to keep your best player involved in all of the action.
Yeah, what did you think of Tatum on Jamal? Because,
Oh no, like no, can't guard
okay,
him. Look at
yeah.
so this right here, like Tatum was like falling asleep, like on the ball. I think that Tatum is I don't want Tatum switching off onto like the best guards in the NBA. He can switch off onto like mid guards and
Hmm.
like bad ones, obviously. Because he does have good foot speed and all of that, but he really is a power forward. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things. Like I watched this game and thought, okay, AG is actually the most versatile defender in the NBA. Because I've heard like that being a thing that people, brought up as a discussion. It's like, oh, is AG in that conversation? I think it's Jason Tatum, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh no, AG's way more like disciplined, at least in these interactions, whether he's going to get scored on or not. Because watch Tatum here. If you play this, totally falls asleep. Jamal's like, just gets him with a hezzy
Yeah,
and then
Jamal
gets
is
wide
wide open
open.
as he's going into the
Jamal's
shot.
great also. I do want to point that I don't think that Tatum is like bad here, but it's just like this is not where he can make a positive impact as a
Hmm.
defender.
I thought Jamal, like,
Um,
that was off a rejected screen where he just went to a step
yeah.
back three and hit the shot. He had some really good rejected screens that, whether
Yes.
he went to a step back or just created rim pressure, was really good. I mean, this next play, he's just ISOing Pritchard and just packing him down and getting the fadeaway. One thing I did think, though, speaking of those kinds of shots and just like getting to a pull up or like an ISO or fadeaway, is these are tough shots. And a lot of the times, Jamal in the Lakers series during the championship run has people like Jason Timm saying he's one of the best tough shot makers in the league. Now people aren't really thinking of him in that way necessarily because he didn't have as great of a playoffs. It's like, how sustainable is that style? And I think that style does explain a lot of the statistics around Jamal and the discussion. And yeah,
Yeah, I
this
mean,
is kind of what we live with.
we talked about this before the playoffs, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like what makes Jamal different than, these other high level guards that are perhaps more consistent. Like they have a go-to, they have like some particular not just a go-to shot, but like a go-to athletic trade that they happen to be exploiting to get to that shot. And Jamal relies, especially now, like post ACL, where he doesn't have quite the same level of burst as he did before, almost exclusively on craft and coming off of screens and all of that. My thing with that though is like he is so good at it. That's the thing is like his go-to is this mid-range area, but he gets to it in so many different
Yeah.
ways. If you could actually, but I want to get back to the craft. If you could fast forward to it's in the third quarter around right here. Okay. So he's coming off the screen. This is another example of that same play. So Kristaps is playing drop and they end up um playing like basically sticking to Jokic, giving him free reign. But then Drew comes over to help, right? So they're like, okay, we need to revise this coverage. And Jamal is just so creative with how he's
Mm,
going to attempt that shot. So then he ends up doing the finger roll instead of just a scoop layup, right?
yeah.
And
He like
like, I mean, look at this.
goes back into his left hand, kind of then back to the right around Drew, and then just lays it off the
Right.
glass.
I kind of liken him to almost a Kyrie Irving, although Kyrie Irving has, I think, more dribble combinations. Like I would say that he's a superior ball handler to Jamal because he can also create separation with his ball handling. Like, but those are two players that don't really have like the best athletic tools. Jamal has a bit more size, obviously, and he does still have some burst. Like we talked about some of the block shots that he can get that rely more on their craftiness and moving off the ball. There were several instances in this game where he's like, "Oh, I can easily shed Derek White off ball." Like Derek White just couldn't stay with him. So then they end up just being like, "Okay, Derek White, you just go on to MPJ, like whatever." Right? This is what happened in the Wolves series is that Ant couldn't stay with Jamal off the ball or Jaden couldn't stay with Jamal off the ball. Jamal couldn't be off ball as much in that series, so they could just put Ant on him on the ball, and it was harder for Jamal
Hmm.
to shed him that way.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that because I saw some off-ball like kind of screens where they were trying to get Derek White switched onto Jamal, and I was like, that's kind of interesting because Derek White, you think he's a really good defender and all that, but yeah, you make a good
He's
point
also
there.
there were other points where Jamal's just like bullying Derek White also. So like
Yeah,
on the ball. He was unbothered by Derek White.
yeah,
That was really nice to see actually. I was like, "Oh yeah, like he can actually completely outsmart even like the best defenders in the NBA." And that's the thing with this game that really stands out to me. Like he might have had more points in other games, but the Celtics have so many good defenders and you see Jamal cook every single one of them at
mm-hmm,
different points in this game. And
mm-hmm,
he was so unbothered. Like he was incredibly efficient in this game. These were tough shots, but by like just general NBA standards, but they weren't actually like tough shots for Jamal. Like sometimes Jamal takes these shots where I'm just like literally that was luck that went in.
yeah,
Um,
but you're
but
gonna
these
get some of
were
those.
these were like shots that I want to see Jamal just generally be more efficient on because he can make them, and he did in this game. These like short mid-range jump
Hmm.
shots, posting up a smaller player when it comes to like a Peyton Pritchard. He posted up Drew in this game and got to a baseline midi. Posted up Derek White at different points in this game. He was driving to the basket, coming off of screens, whether it was with Jokic as the pick and roll partner or AG as the pick and roll partner. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
there were
could
the.
go on, so why don't you go?
I mean, there was even some missed shots. He was wide open, like for three, and missed them, which was unfortunate. It's gonna happen, but like, coming off a double drag and Al Horford trying to scram switch off, and then he's open and takes it and missed it.
Yes,
Um,
but he
I,
takes it, right? Like
yeah,
he's sometimes hesitant with those shots, which kind of pisses me off because he can be so efficient from three. I'm glad that he took them in this game.
right.
Seven attempts is not like high volume or anything, but this was a very low paced game. I believe it was 87 possessions. That would rank like dead last in the NBA if that was the average number of possessions in a game. Like it would be dead last by a mile. So
Hmm.
7 3-point attempts actually like pretty good, I think,
Right.
in that context. Just for the audience's uh, for context for the audience, the Nuggets are not like a super high paced team themselves. They average a little over 97 possessions per game. So an 87 possession game is incredibly slow. Both the Celtics and the Nuggets decided to like really strangle pace in this game. And it was a really big part of this game was who plays better half court basketball. I did have a comment on that actually, because even though it was a low-paced game for the most part, it seemed like there were more instances where the Celtics were willing to punish in transition and push pace when, say, the
Hmm.
Nuggets were not, like, already set up in the half court on the other end,
Yeah.
pretty more often, and it seemed like Brown and Tatum did it by driving in transition. Derek White and Drew Holiday did it usually by getting the ball up the floor as quickly as
Hmm.
possible.
Even off made
Um,
baskets, they were trying to do that.
Even off made baskets, absolutely, and I think that's something that I think the Celtics don't normally play at the slow pace that they did in this game overall against the Nuggets, so I think that's more indicative of what they do against most teams most of the time, and I do wonder, after the Nuggets were ranked 27th in pace in the NBA last season, are they gonna start playing a little bit faster next year? Especially with, Russell Westbrook on the team now. Maybe
Mm,
Peyton Watson's gonna be doing more ball handling, like just grab and goes and like pushing in transition or getting the ball up the floor faster in particular is a way that they could do that without changing too much of how they actually play, just because it would just give them more time to run their offense compared to, how they did
yeah.
last.
It's just reminding me of KCP like struggling and his transition finishing, which I'm
Oh my
like, I'm
god.
not trying
Yeah,
to
me
look for the
too.
bad of KCP now that he's not on the team, but I did notice it was
No, I
kind of a
mean, we
rough
talked
game for
about
him,
this
and
we
I
talked
was
about
like,
this when he was still on the team. Like, this was a running meme where it's like, I just assume that's a missed a KCP transition layup is gonna be a miss. If he makes it, like, the other team has to be so sad.
and CB will have to work on transition finishing, but I would say like with CB and Pwat and Aaron Gordon, Russell Westbrook and stuff, they could get their pace up, I think,
Yeah,
for next season. But
completely
part of it
agree.
too, it just makes me think of, Jamal's motor and just being relentless in motion on offense, like
Yeah.
this one in the fourth quarter. And it partly goes hand in hand with Jaylen Brown's kind of physicality, because I think sometimes Jamal was struggling to get himself in position to come for a handoff because Jalen's playing up tight, high up the court, and he can't necessarily push Jaylen Brown into the court to get in position to get off the screen more cleanly. There are times where Jaylen Brown was doing pretty good at that, and then, he couldn't get to the handoff and had to come into the lane, come back around to get the handoff, things like that, which means you're running around more. Like on this example, there's kind of like a
Well, I
little
mean, that's
brush
how Steph
screen.
plays, right? That's
Yeah,
why he's, like, the best conditioned player in the
very
NBA.
Steph like, was very reminding me of that. AG kind of has this little brush screen on Jaylen Brown here in the lane, so it's almost like it's a zoom action where it's like Jamal's getting the handoff here, and then he's coming around, and Jaylen
Oh,
Brown's way
this is
behind now, so now he's got the separation and can get the shot
yep.
on him and makes it. And that was a tough ass shot, and now the Nuggets are up 4 in the fourth quarter. I liked Murray's fourth quarter a lot too.
I have here he had a fourth quarter flurry. He was in his bag. If we could just play all the baskets from the fourth quarter because they were all different and all
Yeah.
like impressive.
Well, let's start off because the Celtics had a zone going and to start the
Yeah.
fourth, and Jamal just dribbled right through it. He
Yep.
was just like, "Okay, I'll just go right to the basket," and scored.
Thanks. And
Got
one.
the and one. They couldn't stop him at all on that. So he was just creating rim pressure, driving, like you
Here's
said.
Tatum trying to
Oh,
defend a crafty player. And I mean it's Jamal. That's the thing is I want to emphasize that again. I had skepticism of Tatum guarding guards before rewatching this game, but watching this game just kind of reconfirmed it. But Jamal is incredible. Like, look at this. This is a tough shot for
yeah,
anybody else, but it's also a shot that he can make, and then he made it.
that was the one where I was like, "Dang, Tatum kind of struggles on Jamal."
Everybody on the Celtics struggled on Jamal.
Hmm.
I think
And
Jaylen Brown actually probably did the best of anybody across the 2 matchups, but Jamal still cooked him at times, and you just
yeah,
have to find the right strategy for cooking a particular look at this, defender. Like, Tatum,
yeah.
I think, is otherwise a good isolation defender, but Jamal was unbothered by this
It's just
contest.
nothing fancy. It's a zone.
Look,
AG.
you make a 4 try to navigate screens like this. This is something that, like, anybody's gonna get stuck on screens like that, look, and then he creates this separation.
Tatum kind of crosses Murray's plane on the court
Yeah.
because he's trailing. then he just goes right to the step back and hits it. And it's a difficult shot.
And that step back was really efficient for him last season in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Here we go, NBA University. He was shooting, as of March 16th, 59.9% effective field goal percentage on step-back jumpers this season, 41.3% on step-back threes. So definitely one of the most efficient step-back jump shot shooters in the NBA, apparently. Like, that just happened last season, and it was, like, not a part of the narrative of Jamal, but he had a lot of great aspects to his regular season, but it's really a matter of, like, one, health, like, first and foremost, just, like, be healthy, be available to play with the team, because even if you're not making these spectacular shots, he has this positive impact on the floor just by virtue of how he plays with Jokic. But then when he's in this zone, no one can stop him.
And that's the Jamal that was like in the finals run that we were seeing, that just was on another level, that I thought, wow, we've unlocked it. We have it. We're the Nuggets. We're going to be a dynasty. And then we have this down year. I think Jamal's going to get back to it. And it's like you could understand how a calf strain is going to really affect someone when that's their game. You need the step back separation. You need the power to get up into the jump shot. And it's all coming from there. And you're going to have like these energy leaks, so to say, when your calf's fucked up. So, it is an excuse, I guess, I'm making for Jamal. But for all the fans that are worried out there, like, I think it's legit. And I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt for this next season and be excited that he's a Nugget again. Because, like, he had I don't know the stats, but he had an amazing regular season. Other people have been pointing this out. His regular season was up there with some of his best, like his PER is at the top. His averages are close to his career averages. And he just got hurt at the end of the season and couldn't do it in the playoffs. Like, it's bad timing, I know. And we've lost, I guess, 3 postseasons, if you will, because of a Jamal injury, which is a lot. And I get that it's frustrating. But
yeah, I'm looking at the advanced numbers too, because I've gotten into this whole like critiquing EPM thing because some of their defensive metrics in particular don't really match up with what I understand of certain players.
defense
But
is
especially
hard
when
to
it comes to offensive EPM, and they actually value efficiency like more than I think a lot of advanced metrics do. Jamal actually ranks 14th in offensive EPM last season. Jokic is up there. He's number 2 right behind Luka. And like a large part of that is because of how he plays off of Jokic, right? Like I think that these metrics between players tend to be linked because it's really about impact on the floor. Obviously, you're playing more with Jokic, he's going to find ways to maximize you. But he also improves how Jokic plays. Jokic had so many spectacular plays in this game, we didn't even get to them. But for every spectacular play that Jamal makes, that's one less that Jokic has to make. So
but they both had to make a lot of spectacular plays to win
because
this
no
game.
one else because no one else could even do like normal stuff. But like you said, defensively, he had some moments. I do want to shout out Peyton Watson in particular because he did have some spectacular plays. He does still look like a baby giraffe on offense. And even like there were some plays where I think Tatum like got him.
Mm-hmm.
But I might actually go back and watch the March meeting between these teams that happened in Denver, because I do think that Peyton did a better job defensively in that game, just being more just like disciplined positionally. But he had spectacular blocks in this game.
He was the 4th leading scorer. He was kind of like the X factor of the game.
For the Nuggets, was he really?
Yeah, it was.
Oh God.
Jamal, Jokic, MPJ, Pwat. And he played good defense. He's played 20 minutes. Christian Brown only played 5. So Pwat was kind of...
Christian didn't play in the second half. So
yeah, so it was kind of like the piece that helped get us over the edge a little bit if any other kind of role player had to do it. So good for him.
Well, I just thought that this was Jamal's most impressive game just because you got to see the depth of his bag and how he can cook even the best of perimeter defenders in a variety of ways. It's one of the reasons that our whole playoff preview really centered around Jamal's matchups with different defenders and what he was going to do in order to take advantage of those matchups. I do think that despite his limitations, he is one of the more versatile offensive stars in the NBA. Now he's going to be paid like it. So he really needs to deliver. Thanks for everybody for sticking around this long. Over half of you are not subscribed to the channel. So if you do like our content, please remember to subscribe, hit the like button, share it, hit the notification bell, leave us a review, a 5-star review, preferably on Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at What's in a Game NBA. We also have our new clip channel in the description. The link is in the description at What's in a Game NBA clips. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks. Let's get back to winning.